In this lesson, we're going to talk about destructive versus non-destructive editing in Photoshop. It's a hugely important topic to understand, but fortunately, it's also simple. A destructive versus non-destructive edit simply means you're either permanently altering the pixel data in the photo or you're not. So let me show you what I'm talking about. If we open up in the project files a file called city-11, we'll see we have a nice photo here of a city, and let's say, for example, we wanted to change something about this specific photo. So we can see we have a background layer and we only have one layer, and we want to change the contrast. So let's say we want to increase the contrast of this image. And the destructive way of doing this would be to go to Image, Adjustments, and then applying any of these adjustments. So in our context, we're going to specify brightness and contrast. So we have this brightness and contrast up here with two sliders, and to increase the contrast, we simply take this slider and increase it this way. You can also decrease it as well. So let's say right around here, 41 or so, and then hit OK. Now what has happened is it has baked that contrast data directly into the pixels of the original photograph. So this would be considered a destructive edit because there's no longer a way for us to go back and really work with the original data, the original pixel data, in order to adjust again the contrast. Now, of course, we can go to Image, Adjustments, and Brightness and Contrast and try to work with it more, but you've really lost the original detail that you once had. So this would be considered a destructive edit. So I'm going to back up with Control Z. So now we're at our original photo, and the way we can approach this in a non-destructive manner is by using adjustment layers. So destructive over here is again just by going to Image, Adjustments, and then applying brightness and contrast. But we have what's called adjustment layers. And so exactly as it sounds is it will add a layer for that specific adjustment instead of baking that information into the pixels. So the way we do that is going to Window and Adjustments. And here is the Adjustments panel. And we can see we have a number of them, and we have brightness and contrast. If we click on brightness and contrast, you'll see that now we have a new layer. And if you want it to only include the layer beneath it, you have to remember to click this button right here, and that means it will only apply it to this layer. So if you had a Photoshop document with many layers, but you only wanted it to apply to this specific layer, you have to click this button. All right, so now we can add or adjust the contrast, and what's really cool now is we can hide this layer, and we can see the original pixel data. As we can see, it was not permanently changed in any way, the way it was destructively over here. So this would be considered a non-destructive edit. And what's also really good is we can apply multiple adjustment layers and experiment with the saturation, the lightness of the image, etc. And we can always experiment with hiding some of them and showing them. And what's just great is the fact that it is non-destructive. So when it comes to non-destructive versus destructive editing, it doesn't only apply to just adjustment layers. We also have what's called filters, and it's the exact same scenario. So if I hide these or get rid of them real quick, we go back to our original image, and we'll see up here we have what's called filter. So we can add a filter directly onto the image of some sort. So let's say we wanted to add a Gaussian blur. All right, so we hit OK, and now this blur has been permanently baked into the photograph. Now this would be considered destructive because we no longer have the original pixel data. So if I hit Control Z, we'll go back to the original photo. Now a way of adding what's called smart filters, which would be the equivalent of adjustment layers, we right-click this and we specify Convert to Smart Object. All right, so now it changed the icon a little bit. And now if we go back to the same menu, Filter, Blur, and Gaussian Blur, and hit OK, we'll see now beneath it has dropped what's called smart filters layer. So now any type of filters that we add through this menu, because this has been changed to a smart object, will be added beneath this smart filter section. So let's say, for example, we wanted to add noise of some sort. All right, so we'll hit OK. And now we can hide all of the smart filters, or we can hide individually the actual filters themselves to see what it looks like. So the important thing to remember that this is now non-destructive. All right, and then finally, we also have another way to manipulate a photo in a non-destructive way. So let me go ahead and hide this. Now, if I double click this right here, we'll bring up the layer styles. So layer styles are something that you can apply to any type of photo. And what you can do is, say for example, if we wanted to add something like an inner glow, we can increase the size just so we could see it. Maybe change the color here to like a black and change the blend mode to normal. We'll see now we have this interesting sort of glow on the outside. So if we hit OK, we'll see we have underneath here effects and inner glow. Now we can hide this, and as we could see, it is not destructive. So if we double click this again, we wanted to add a second one, like a color overlay, and change the blend mode here, for example, to something like this, although I'm not sure why you would want to. Hit OK, we can see we can have any number of those layer styles, and it is not changed the original pixel data. So that's the important thing to realize: destructive versus non-destructive editing. All right, so in the next lesson, we're going to go ahead and take a look at techniques for isolating objects in photographs. All right, I'll see you then.